The gym buzzed with Saturday morning energy, the sharp tang of sweat in the air mixing with the faint scent of polished mats. Families whispered, folding chairs creaked, and judges flipped through scorecards while teenagers stretched, practiced, and exchanged nervous glances. On the edge of the chaos, a man entered quietly, barefoot, wearing a plain black t-shirt tucked into crisp white GI pants. No belt, no patches, no team logo, nothing to mark him as a competitor. His name, written neatly on the registration form, was Ethan Carter. Ethan didn't warm up. He didn't shadow box. He didn't even pace. Instead, he took a seat on a bench against the far wall, away from the crowd, folding his hands in his lap. His posture was impeccable, shoulders squared, back straight. There was an intensity to his stillness, a calm that seemed almost otherworldly. A few teenagers noticed him and whispered, laughter hiding behind curiosity. "Who even is that guy?" one muttered. A judge frowned, uncertain, but no one recognized the quiet authority behind those eyes. They didn't know he had once served as a tomb guard at Arlington, standing at attention through rain and sun for hours, guarding a monument to the unknown. Across the gym, a man in his late 50s sipped coffee from a paper cup, leaning forward with a subtle recognition. He had seen that posture before, that measured precision. Last year, he had watched a soldier perform the ceremonial guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. No wasted motion, no glance off center. Now, he realized that soldier was here, sitting quietly, unnoticed. The tournament continued. Names were called, matches started, points tallied, but Ethan remained still. Each fight unfolded with shouts and thuds, but he didn't react, didn't flinch. Some observers assumed he was out of place, a man past his prime, perhaps trying his luck. But those who recognized the demeanor, the veterans, the seasoned competitors, understood. This was the presence of someone trained in vigilance, patience, and control. Finally, the call came. Men's Advanced Division, Ethan Carter. He stood with slow, deliberate motion, walking to the mat with unassuming grace. Across from him, Miguel Ortega bounced lightly on his toes, confident and smirking. Miguel was fast, a regional finalist for 2 years running. He glanced at Ethan's bare waist and muttered, "Easy match." But the quiet man didn't respond. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, yet his eyes remained watchful, calm. The match began. Miguel's first kick sliced through the air. Ethan didn't move. Another jab, a hook, a front kick. He simply angled his body just enough, letting the attacks miss by inches. The crowd began to notice, murmurs spreading. Some thought it luck. Others, more observant, sensed something disciplined, deliberate. Then came the decisive moment. Miguel overextended in a flurry, and Ethan stepped aside, subtly guiding his opponent's momentum. Miguel stumbled off balance and fell. No strike had been thrown, no flourish displayed, yet the result was absolute. Ethan bowed once, returning to his seat as quietly as he had arrived. There was no celebration, no smile, no raised fist. A few whispers rippled through the crowd, some calling it stalling, others doubting the legitimacy. But those who understood martial mastery, the control without aggression, the power held in reserve, saw clearly. Ethan Carter had moved like a soldier, a guardian, a man whose training transcended ordinary competition. As he sat back down, folding his hands in his lap, the spectators realized they had witnessed something rare. The quiet, unassuming competitor had revealed that mastery was not in striking, not in speed or aggression, but in patience, precision, and presence. And while the tournament continued around him, Ethan remained poised, ready, and completely unshaken, an enigma of discipline in a world of noise. The air in the gym shifted as the next matchup was announced. Ethan Carter versus Kazuo Tanaka, the reigning 3-time national champion. The crowd's chatter quieted, replaced by an undercurrent of excitement and disbelief. Kazuo, a tall, lean fighter in his late 20s, strode onto the mat with the precision and confidence of a seasoned professional. His red belt edged with black stripes gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the embroidered crest on his GI marked him as a competitor of international caliber. Spectators leaned forward, whispering among themselves. "This isn't going to last long," a teenager muttered. A few seasoned competitors exchanged cautious glances. Kazuo's reputation wasn't just for winning, it was for dominance, speed, and sheer force. Ethan stepped onto the mat as calmly as he had in the previous round. Barefoot, black t-shirt tucked into crisp white GI pants, his expression unchanging. No sign of nerves, no twitch of muscle. He bowed slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, but his eyes remained steady and focused. For the first time, the contrast between the two fighters was stark. Explosive power versus quiet control. The judge dropped the hand. Match start. Kazuo surged forward immediately, launching a snapping front kick, followed by a back fist and spinning hook. Each strike was perfectly timed, precise, and fast, like watching the motion of a well-oiled machine. Yet Ethan wasn't there. Each attack passed through air, inches from his body, as he shifted just enough to avoid contact. The audience gasped at the first few missed strikes. The silence was palpable, the hum of fluorescent lights and faint creak of the floor mats the only background. Kazuo changed rhythm, mixing in low kicks and thrusts to the torso, hoping to catch Ethan off guard. Each time, Ethan moved with effortless precision, conserving energy, never overcommitting, his movements minimal yet decisive. To the casual eye, it appeared passive. To the trained eye, it was terrifying mastery, control without aggression, power held in reserve. The exchanges continued. Kazuo's face betrayed frustration. His speed and timing, honed through years of training, began to falter as he confronted a target who didn't react in expected ways. Ethan's stillness disrupted Kazuo's rhythm, forcing him to question the predictability of his attacks. A faint murmur ran through the stands. Even the veteran who had recognized Ethan nodded subtly, understanding the depth of discipline being displayed. Then came the fifth exchange. Kazuo executed a flying sidekick. Full speed, full strength, a culmination of years of training. Ethan shifted his weight slightly, just enough to clear the strike, pivoted and returned to his neutral stance. His hands hung loosely at his sides, eyes calm, inviting neither aggression nor panic. In that moment, Ethan's presence communicated more than words could. The message was clear: strength without intent to harm is still mastery. Kazuo stumbled slightly, caught off guard for the first time. Ethan advanced a single step toward him, measured and deliberate. Not to strike, not to dominate, just presence. The champion's chest rose and fell unevenly, sweat clinging to his brow. He realized that every motion Ethan made was intentional, controlled, and unshakable. There was no need for force. The quiet command in Ethan's body unsettled Kazuo more than any punch could. The audience, captivated, watched in tense silence. Phones lowered. Conversations ceased. Even seasoned judges leaned forward, murmuring quietly to one another. Ethan hadn't thrown a single strike, yet he dominated the room with sheer presence and discipline. Kazuo's expression shifted from disbelief to cautious respect. The champion now understood he wasn't fighting for victory against an opponent. He was confronting an ideal, a standard that transcended ordinary combat. Ethan's calmness didn't just control the match, it controlled the atmosphere. Every fighter, every observer, every breath in the gym seemed to synchronize with the silent rhythm of the tomb guard who had chosen to fight, not with fists, but with mastery itself. The gym had gone silent. Every spectator, coach, and judge seemed to hold their breath as the battle of contrasts unfolded. Kazuo's explosive energy against Ethan's calm, unwavering presence. Each attack from Kazuo was a statement of experience, a testament to years of training. Yet Ethan didn't move beyond what was necessary. He was always present, always anticipating, but never overcommitting. Kazuo's attacks became more desperate, sharper, more varied. A spinning elbow, a feint followed by a high roundhouse kick, a sudden low sweep intended to unbalance Ethan. Every strike was meant to dominate, to force a reaction, but Ethan's body flowed with them, subtly adjusting his weight, pivoting his stance, stepping just enough. It was as if he had memorized every possible motion before it happened. The crowd could see the precision, the discipline. It wasn't luck. For the first time, Kazuo's confidence wavered. His movements, normally flawless, began to falter. Breath quickened. Timing slipped. His strikes, once a continuous assault, now contained hesitation. Split seconds that could make a difference. Ethan's minimal motions were calculated, silent communication. He could respond at any moment, but there was no need yet. Then came the critical exchange. Kazuo launched a powerful flying sidekick, every ounce of his strength behind it. The move was textbook perfect. Ethan shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, and the kick missed by inches. The crowd gasped audibly. The champion's momentum carried him slightly forward, and in that instant, Ethan moved his weight subtly into position, redirecting Kazuo's force without striking, without aggression. Kazuo stumbled, his upper body twisted awkwardly, and then gravity claimed him. He fell forward, landing face first on the mat with a heavy thud. Silence enveloped the gym. Time seemed to slow as spectators processed what had happened. The champion, undefeated for years, had been unbalanced by the calm presence of a man who had barely moved. Ethan didn't react. His hands remained at his sides, his gaze steady. There was no celebration, no triumph, no ego. He had demonstrated control, precision, and mastery without force. Kazuo pushed himself up, confusion and awe etched on his face. Slowly, he recognized the depth of the lesson. He hadn't been defeated by brute strength or speed, but by the quiet power of discipline and anticipation. The judges conferred briefly and then signaled the match's end. Ethan's composure never wavered. He bowed lightly, acknowledging his opponent, and stepped back to the edge of the mat. Kazuo, breathing hard, raised his head and bowed in return. It was a bow of respect, humility, and recognition. Not for winning, not for power, but for mastery. As Ethan walked off the mat, the gym slowly returned to motion. Conversations resumed, but the atmosphere was different. People whispered not about the fight's outcome, but about the rare display of control, presence, and understanding. A veteran in the stands, the one who had recognized Ethan at Arlington, quietly noted in his mind, "Not every warrior needs a battlefield. Some battles are fought in the stillness between attacks." Later, the tournament coordinator approached Ethan with a clipboard and a tentative smile. "You're eligible for the finals," he said. "We'd like to interview you, maybe a photo opportunity." Ethan shook his head once. "I came here for a promise," he said simply, and looked past the banners and folding chairs, past the rows of emptying bleachers. That was all the explanation anyone needed. The day ended. The trophies were awarded. But Ethan Carter remained a quiet sentinel at the edge of the mat. He hadn't sought glory, only fulfilled a commitment. And those who understood, those who truly saw, would remember his presence far longer than any scorecard or medal. Mastery, after all, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it simply stands still. The tournament floor had quieted after the final match. Chairs scraped softly as spectators shuffled to the exits, and the hum of conversations filled the air, subdued yet reverent. Ethan Carter remained seated at the edge of the mat, just as he had throughout the day, hands folded neatly in his lap, eyes steady. The weight of the day's events hadn't reached him, not in pride, not in fatigue. His purpose had always been singular, to keep a promise. The tournament coordinator approached cautiously, clipboard in hand. His steps were hesitant, as though approaching a man who belonged to a different realm of discipline entirely. "Mr. Carter," he began, voice slightly rattled, "you're officially eligible for the finals. The judges would like a photo opportunity, maybe a short interview." Ethan shook his head once. His gaze swept across the gym, past the banners and folding chairs, past the emptying stands, and then back to the floor. "I came here for a reason," he said quietly. There was no anger, no pride, only quiet resolve. The coordinator blinked, unsure how to respond. "A reason?" Ethan nodded. "A promise. That's all." The coordinator hesitated but didn't press further. He left Ethan with a respectful distance, leaving the man alone with his thoughts. Long after the crowd had dispersed, after the trophies had been handed out, Ethan remained seated. Silence surrounded him, unbroken except for the faint echo of footsteps leaving the gym. A man approached from the stands, the same veteran who had recognized Ethan at Arlington National Cemetery. Mark Reynolds had watched the day unfold, witnessing something rare, a display of mastery, control, and presence so subtle that it required understanding to appreciate fully. "You didn't come for glory," Mark said softly. "Not for trophies, not for attention. You came for something else." Ethan's gaze met his. "There was a boy I served with," he said. "Young, intelligent, fierce when he had to be, yet always respectful. He wanted to be a martial artist after his service, taught me kata in the desert between deployments. He didn't make it back. I promised him if I ever got out I would do one match. Just one. Not to win, not to prove anything. To honor what he believed in." Mark nodded, understanding. The weight of the story, the unspoken bond between soldiers, filled the space around them. "Strength doesn't always mean violence," Ethan continued. "Silence doesn't mean weakness. Being underestimated can be freedom." Later, the tournament coordinator returned, holding a golden trophy and a medal. "You didn't stay for the ceremony, but the judges unanimously awarded you the title." Tanaka withdrew, saying he had nothing left to prove. He paused, watching Ethan. "You don't need the trophy." Ethan shook his head. "I don't need it. I came here for a promise, not tradition." He looked once more toward the mat. where every motion and breath of the match seemed etched into memory. Mark Reynolds observed silently, still standing near the bleachers. He had seen plenty in his years, tours overseas, lost friends, too many good men gone too soon, but this day stayed with him longer than most battles, not because of the fight, but because of how little it took for Ethan to fulfill his purpose. No shouting, no display of power, only presence, precision, and honor. As Ethan finally rose and left the gym, he paused once at the edge of the mat. His eyes lingered briefly on the polished floor, the banners, the empty chairs. Then, without looking back, he walked away. No medal, no autograph, no announcement, just silence. And for those who understood, that was enough. Some battles are fought quietly. Some victories leave no record on paper, no mark on the scoreboard. For Ethan Carter, the true triumph had always been in keeping a promise, honoring a friend and standing watch, even after the mission was over. Even after the gym had emptied, the memory of Ethan Carter's performance lingered like a low hum, subtle but persistent. Whispers traveled among the few remaining spectators and competitors. Those who had witnessed the final match understood something rare had unfolded. A victory not of aggression, but of presence. The young fighters who had mocked his plain black t-shirt and bare waist now looked at each other with newfound respect, their previous certainty replaced by cautious reflection. Mark Reynolds remained in the stands, notebook in hand. He scribbled observations, capturing details that might otherwise be lost to time. He had seen wars, losses, and the harshness of life on the battlefield, but what he witnessed today carried a different weight. It wasn't the physical dominance that struck him. It was mastery without spectacle, discipline without ego, strength without display. Ethan had shown that restraint could command more respect than force. A small group of instructors lingered near the mats, speaking in hushed tones. "Did you see how he moved?" one said. Every step measured, every motion deliberate. Like he had already fought 1,000 battles in his mind. Another nodded, glancing at the trophy left beside the mat. He didn't need to strike. He didn't need to prove anything. That's the kind of control most never achieve. Meanwhile, younger competitors tentatively approached Ethan's bench, drawn by curiosity and awe. None dared speak at first. They simply observed, the quiet authority in his posture, the calm focus in his eyes, the way he exuded readiness without aggression. One teen finally asked softly, Are you really a tomb guard?" Ethan gave a faint nod, not boastful, merely acknowledging the truth. The teen's eyes widened, a mix of reverence and disbelief reflecting in the dim gym lights. As word spread, even the parents and spectators who had initially overlooked him paused to reflect. Conversations that had been mundane now carried a different tone, filled with admiration and introspection. Some discussed the technique, others the discipline, but all sensed the deeper message. Not every victory is measured by points or accolades. Some are measured by integrity, presence, and the fulfillment of a promise. Ethan remained seated, hands folded, eyes steady. Occasionally he glanced at the mat now empty, as if replaying the exchanges in his mind. Each subtle pivot, each calculated step, everything had been purposeful. He hadn't needed to strike, and that had been enough. That was the lesson, silent yet profound. As the gym's lights dimmed for the evening, Mark Reynolds closed his notebook and stood. He lingered a moment longer, watching Ethan rise and gather his belongings with quiet precision. Without a word, Ethan walked toward the exit, leaving the trophy behind. It was a small gesture, yet it spoke volumes about his ethos. The promise mattered more than recognition. Outside, the fading sunlight cast long shadows across the parking lot. Ethan's silhouette moved with the same quiet confidence he had shown all day. Mark followed at a distance, wanting to ensure he captured every detail for posterity. The world had already shifted a little in that gym. Some lessons like this one didn't require sound. They resonated in the heart. That night, stories of Ethan Carter's calm mastery began to circulate quietly among the local dojo community. No viral hashtags, no flashy social media posts, just quiet, word-of-mouth reverence. Veterans, instructors, and students alike shared the tale, ensuring that the lesson would persist. Strength without violence, mastery without ego, and the fulfillment of promises above all else. The gym had emptied except for a few stragglers, coaches, volunteers, and a handful of students still packing up their gear. The echo of footsteps on polished floors and the distant hum of fluorescent lights were the only sounds accompanying the aftermath of Ethan Carter's performance. Though the match was over, its impact lingered like an invisible current flowing through the room. Coach Reynolds and several instructors gathered near the registration table, speaking in hushed tones. "I've seen a lot of fighters," one said, adjusting his clipboard, "but nothing like that. He didn't even throw a punch, yet he controlled the entire match." Another instructor shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. "It's more than technique. That's presence, mastery without ego." Some of the younger competitors, still holding their GI uniforms in their arms, exchanged glances filled with a mixture of awe and intimidation. "I don't even know how he did it," muttered a teen, voice barely above a whisper. "He just stood there, and everyone else got lost in his rhythm." Their eyes flicked toward Ethan's bench, now empty, save for the small golden trophy that had been quietly placed there by the coordinator. Ethan's presence lingered like a calm shadow. Even the tournament coordinator, clipboard in hand, moved cautiously around the mats, unsure of how to address him. He wanted to ask about interviews, photographs, or even the final match results, but found himself hesitating. There was a quiet power in the way Ethan had conducted himself, a reminder that not every victory needs applause. Meanwhile, in the corner near the bleachers, Mark Reynolds continued scribbling notes, pausing occasionally to watch the few remaining students practicing kata. He noticed how even their movements were subconsciously influenced by what they had just witnessed. Subtle shifts in stance, pauses in their breathing, heightened awareness, all echoed the lesson Ethan had imparted without a word. As the last chairs were stacked and the gym doors prepared to close, a small group of martial artists approached the mat. Their expressions were respectful, almost reverent. They crouched slightly, nodding toward the trophy. One of them, an older instructor with streaks of gray in his hair, whispered, "He didn't fight for recognition. He fought to honor someone. That's rare." In the parking lot, a few parents lingered, still discussing what had happened. They shared their own interpretations, some focusing on discipline, others on restraint, but all agreed on one point. Ethan Carter's match had been a lesson in something more profound than competition. It was about honor, control, and the weight of promises kept. Finally, as the night drew in and shadows lengthened across the parking lot, Ethan appeared at the gym doors. He paused, briefly observing the quiet aftermath, the trophies, and the subtle stir of admiration in those who remained. Without a word, he walked away, the fading light casting long shadows across his path. The air seemed heavier, charged with the unspoken acknowledgement that something extraordinary had occurred that day. For those who had been present, the lesson was indelible. Ethan Carter had shown that strength doesn't always roar, and mastery doesn't always strike. Sometimes the most profound victories are silent, waiting for those who have eyes to see and hearts to understand. The next morning, the gym seemed almost ordinary again. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating the polished floors and folded chairs. But the memory of Ethan Carter's performance lingered in the air like a subtle hum. Staff moved quietly, preparing for a smaller kids' class, but whispers of the previous day's events still threaded through the conversations. Word of Ethan's match had traveled fast. Even those who hadn't attended had heard through the local martial arts community that a man had faced a reigning champion without a belt, without flashy techniques, and had emerged unshaken, undefeated in presence alone. The story was not about victory in the traditional sense. It was about control, awareness, and the invisible weight of experience. Inside a small dojo across town, students gathered around a bulletin board where tournament results were pinned. One senior student, eyes wide, pointed at a description of Ethan's match. "Did you read this?" he asked, voice trembling with excitement. "He didn't even strike, he just stood there and the champion fell." The instructor, a quiet veteran with decades of experience, nodded slowly. "That's discipline. That's presence. That's something many never understand until it's too late." Back at the tournament gym, a group of parents lingered near the parking lot, reflecting on the matches. "I've never seen anything like that," one said, clutching a thermos of coffee. "Usually it's all speed and power, but this was something else. He made them dance without moving." Another parent shook their head, awe on their face. "It's like he rewrote the rules of engagement quietly." Mark Reynolds, still processing what he had witnessed, drove slowly through the empty streets, notebook in hand. He thought about the boy Ethan had spoken of, the one who wanted to open a dojo in Utah. He realized that Ethan's presence had been a promise kept, a silent tribute to a fallen comrade. And yet there was more. The impact wasn't confined to that gym. Anyone who had seen him had absorbed a lesson in restraint, in purpose, in mastery beyond brute force. Meanwhile, Ethan had returned to his quiet routine. No interviews, no ceremonies, no photo sessions. He walked along the gym's edge as if retracing his steps from the day before, reflecting on the subtle echoes of commitment and respect. Every step measured, every movement purposeful, he seemed almost untouchable in his calm. To the few who glimpsed him, there was a sense of witnessing something rare, the kind of mastery that demanded no audience. By afternoon, small ripples of the story had reached other dojos, messages exchanged in martial arts forums, brief posts on local community boards, and hushed discussions among instructors began to paint a picture of Ethan Carter, a man who did not fight for glory, yet left an indelible mark. Some debated the technique, others the philosophy. All agreed on one point. They had glimpsed an example of what discipline could truly mean. As the day ended, the golden trophy remained untouched in the gym, a silent witness to a man who didn't need recognition. The students and instructors who remained felt a subtle shift in their perception of martial arts. It wasn't only about winning matches or collecting accolades. It was about presence, precision and promises kept beyond the mat. And in the quiet of his home, Ethan Carter sat alone, reflecting not on the applause he didn't receive, but on the honor he had quietly upheld. A match that lasted only moments on the mat had stretched far beyond the gym's walls, leaving a legacy that would ripple through the minds and hearts of all who had witnessed it. Weeks passed, but the memory of Ethan Carter's presence at the tournament continued to echo through the martial arts community. Stories of his unorthodox, almost ghostly mastery traveled across dojos, whispered in hallways, shared in forums, and recounted in quiet cafes where instructors gathered. Few had seen such control, discipline, and purpose distilled into a single performance, and fewer still had witnessed it without a single strike thrown. Ethan returned to his ordinary life, walking streets with the same measured steps, appearing unremarkable to most. But those who knew his story, those who had glimpsed the calm before the storm, recognized the quiet power in his movements. Every motion was deliberate, every pause calculated. There was a rhythm that existed only in the mind of someone who had lived through discipline and danger beyond ordinary comprehension. At a small dojo in Utah, the young boy Ethan had spoken of would now begin teaching kata to eager students, inspired by the lessons of his fallen friend. Ethan had kept his promise. His presence had been a testament to more than skill. It was a demonstration of honor, sacrifice, and restraint. Martial artists in the region discussed how he had disrupted the traditional notion of victory. He had reminded everyone that mastery wasn't about domination, but awareness and control, and that strength didn't always demand violence. Mark Reynolds still remembered the scene vividly, the final moment where Ethan had guided a champion's momentum without striking, leaving Kazuo Tanaka stunned and humbled. That single act became a legend among veterans and martial artists alike, a story of discipline and presence that transcended the tournament. The golden trophy remained untouched in the gym, a silent monument to a man who never sought recognition, but left an indelible mark. Months later, at Arlington National Cemetery, a small group gathered at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Ethan stood among them, a quiet sentinel once again, paying tribute not only to the fallen but also to the enduring lessons of commitment and promise. Veterans, young cadets, and civilians alike observed his stance, absorbing the discipline and stillness that had once captivated a gym full of spectators. And in the quiet of homes, dojos, and training halls, the ripple of Ethan Carter's actions continued. Students practiced kata with newfound awareness. Teachers emphasized presence over aggression, and the idea of honor as a living, breathing principle became more than a lesson. It became a standard. Ethan's legacy had transcended the tournament. It was a philosophy, a reminder that true mastery carries responsibility, that restraint is as powerful as action, and that even silence can speak volumes. Ethan never sought fame, never claimed glory, and never needed applause. The world he influenced was quiet, subtle, and profound. Those who understood knew that some victories aren't measured in points, trophies, or accolades. They are measured in the lives touched, the lessons imparted, and the presence left behind. Long after the crowds dispersed, long after the golden medals gathered dust, Ethan Carter remained a figure of quiet authority, a warrior who had never stopped standing watch, who had honored promises and exemplified discipline. His story lingered in the minds of those who witnessed him, a testament to the power of mastery without ego, strength without noise, and a presence that demanded respect simply by existing. And in every dojo, in every gym, and in every mind that remembered, the lesson was clear. Not every warrior needs a battlefield. Some simply need to be seen, remembered, and understood.